ഹായ് ഫ്രണ്ട്സ്, നമുക്ക് അടുത്ത എൻക്ലക്സ് റിവ്യൂ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനിലേക്ക് പോകാം. ഇന്നത്തെ ഫാർമക്കോളജിക്കൽ ആൻഡ് പാരൻട്രൽ തെറാപ്പീസ് എന്ന ടോപ്പിക്കിനെ ബേസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആൻസേഴ്സാണ്. അപ്പം നമുക്കിപ്പോൾ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് നോക്കാം. ഓക്കെ, ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ നമ്പർ 1. ദ നേഴ്സ് ഈസ് കണ്ടക്ടിങ് എ ഹോം വിസിറ്റ് വിത്ത് എ ക്ലയൻറ്റ് ഹു ഹാസ് എ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ഓഫ് angina. Which of the following best demonstrate that further teaching about nitroglycerin therapy is required? So this client is having a knowledge deficit because further, so means one option should be wrong about nitroglycerin admission. Let's see. So the first option is I take a tablet about 10 minutes before I walk up the stairs. Second option is I take no more than 3 doses in a 15 minutes period of time. Third option is I keep the tablets in a glass dish on the windowsill so they are readily available. Fourth option is I will call my doctor immediately if I experience blurred vision. So you think an angina patients, what will be the correct answer when a patient is taking nitroglycerin? What are the correct one he said, and one is a wrong answer here. The taking a nitroglycerin tablet, the first option is correct. Taking a nitroglycerin tablet prior to exertion is an appropriate way to help prevent angina related symptoms induced by activity. So before going for any activities, he should take pills. So that is a correct response for nitroglycerin. We are looking for a wrong response, so that is not the correct answer here. Then taking no more than 3 doses in a 15 minutes period of time is appropriate nitroglycerin dosing instruction. So recommended dose is 3 doses in 15 minutes. That is a correct statement for the patient. Next one is the answer correct here because we are looking for a wrong answer about nitroglycerin. So the answer option 3 is the correct answer here. Nitroglycerin tablets may lose effectiveness if not protected from light. Therefore they should be stored in a dark container. So he said, so I keep the tablets in a glass dish on the windowsill so they are readily available. So it is not the readily available matter, it has to be protected from the sunlight. So this is what the correct answer here. So the blurred option for blurred vision is a significant side effect of nitroglycerin therapy that should be immediately reported to the physician. That is a correct response. Okay, so the answer here is the wrong approach here was the option number 3. Okay, now question number 2. Question number 2 is nurse assesses the peripheral IV site of a client receiving a doxorubicillin infusion and suspect extravasation. After stopping the infusion and disconnecting the IV tubing, which of the following should the nurse do first? So it's a chemotherapy drug, so there is infiltration. What the nurse has to do? She stopped the IV, and next step what she has to do? The first option is apply a hot compress to the IV site. The second is apply a cold compress to the IV site. Third is elevate the affected extremity. Fourth is attempt to aspirate the residual drug. The answer, the rationale here is, let's see why they are wrong, if they are wrong, and if right, how it is right. So let's see. So first option is hot compress should not be applied in an doxorubicillin associated extravasation. If a chemotherapy drug is infiltrated, so don't apply hot compress. Okay, although second option is, although a cold compress is recommended in an doxorubicillin associated extravasation, it should not be applied until residual drug removal has been attempted. So unless and until the extravasation, the infiltrated drug is not removed from the body, should not apply cold compress. So what will be the first step? Once stop, you should remove the residual drug from the infiltrated site. That is the correct option. That will be the fourth option. Fourth option is the correct. The fourth option is correct. The first step the nurse should take is to attempt to remove any residual drug using 1 to 3 ml of syringe. So 1 to 3 ml syringe you use and remove the extravasation in the fluid. The residue went into the infiltrated site and remove that one first. Then only you can do whole cold compress or then option number 3, although elevating the arm for 48 hours is recommended, that should not be done until after the residual drug has been removed. So you can do the first is you are stopping the infusion, second is you are removing the residual from the infiltrate extravasation site, then you can apply cold compress, then you can elevate for 48 hours. Okay, so let's see question number 3. The nurse is preparing to discharge a 72-year-old man on warfarin therapy for a pulmonary embolism. The nurse discharge teaching should include which of the following instructions? Option number 1, follow a healthy diet by increasing ingestion of green leafy vegetables. Second option, take herbal remedies to manage cold symptoms. Third option, avoid alcohol due to enhanced anticoagulant effect. Fourth option, take Coumadin only on an empty stomach. So let's go to the rationale. 3. So the first option, the intake of food containing vitamin K should not be altered from baseline. So no need to increase the normal intake like green leafy vegetable. Don't increase it because this the warfarin antidote is vitamin K. So if you are taking too much of vitamin K, which so it is not required. Only the baseline intake is required. So don't increase that. So then second option is herbal medications may interfere with the effectiveness of warfarin. So we don't know what will happen if herbal medication is taken. Not much research available to state about the effect of herbal medication on warfarin. So that may interfere. So this is not recommended. Okay. Then third option is the correct option. Alcohol can increase the anticoagulant effect of warfarin and should be avoided. So the patient is on warfarin should avoid alcohol intake because if taking alcohol, that may increase the effectiveness of warfarin. And the fourth option is warfarin can be taken without regard to food intake, although gastrointestinal upset may be diminished if taken with the food. So regardless of before food, after food, it is not mandatory, but still if it is a little bit GI irritation takes place, so after food is more good. That's it. So question number 4. A 75-year-old woman has been prescribed amitriptyline hydrochloride to manage neuropathic pain associated with diabetic neuropathy. She reports to the nurse that her pain level has decreased from 7 to 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. However, she is experiencing severe xerostomia. Which of the following strategies should the nurse choose to help relieve these symptoms? So xerostomia is a dryness of mouth. Okay, so this drug causes the amitriptyline. The patient is receiving amitriptyline, okay, to manage her diabetic neuropathy. So let's see what we can do to decrease this. Okay, to relieve her dryness of mouth. Okay, increase caffeine intake. Second option is decrease fluid intake. Third is increase dietary sodium. Fourth is chew sugar-free gums. This one is the correct option is increase the strategy to reduce xerostomia, dry mouth, include increasing the fluid intake and chewing sugar gum free. That is the correct option here. Why the option 1 is wrong? Increasing caffeine intake will not relieve xerostomia. The same thing, decreasing fluid intake also doesn't relieve xerostomia. Third is increasing sodium diet will not relieve xerostomia. So diet, the sodium or fluid decreasing or caffeine, nothing helps for relieving xerostomia. Only what can help here, chewing sugar-free gum, that helps for increasing the salivary production. Means mostly happens what it's due to the salivary gland hypofunction is the cause or suppression of the function from the amitriptyline that may cause the dryness of mouth. The fifth question is prior to administration of digoxin 0.125 mg PO to a client with a chronic heart failure, the nurse determines that the apical pulse is 56. Which of the following should the nurse do first? So, what is our recommendation? If the pulse is 60 and above, we administer digoxin. This client is having 56. What the nurse has to do? So, she went to the patient, she checked the pulse rate, it is 56. What is the next thing? Next, she has to do. First option is administer the drug and recheck the pulse in 1 hour. Second is withhold the drug and notify the physician. Third option is obtain an EKG. Fourth is send a blood sample to the laboratory for a digoxin level. So let's see the rationale. So the first rationale, unless the physician orders specific otherwise, when the client apical pulse drops below 60, the nurse should hold the dose and notify the physician. So unless and until it is indicated by the physician that okay, if it is even 50 you can give, otherwise if there is no order in place, don't give. So you have to do what you have to do, hold the drug, then inform the physician. That is the next step for you. Once you realize there is 56, the pulse rate, the patient is 56, you should hold the drug first, then inform the physician. The third option is here, although an EKG may be indicated, it is not generally the first course. So you have to see what is the task given to you. So by step, by step 1 you doing this, step 2, this is how you have to approach the NCLEX questions based on the questions, okay, by step, priority based. What is your first number, step 1, then the step 2, then step 3, like that. Option 4 is although obtaining a digoxin level may be indicated, it is not generally the first course. So first is holding the drug, then second is inform the physician. Okay, now question number 6. Question number 6, a 65-year-old man with metastatic colon cancer has been prescribed by hydromorphone PA or PRN to help manage his pain. The nurse knows that the rectal route of administration is contraindicated when which of the following is present. It's a rectal route of administration of medication is contraindicated, means not allowed, okay. So nausea and vomiting. Then second option is difficulty swallowing. Third is neutropenia. Fourth is fever. So let's see what is the rationale here. If the patient is having nausea and vomiting, which one is the preferred route? Rectal, isn't it? If the patient is having a problem, rectal route of administration may be preferred when client has nausea and vomiting, and the patient has swallowing difficulty. Which one is preferred? Rectal can be preferred, yeah. And the third option is correct here. The rectal route of administration should not be used in clients who have anal or rectal lesions, mucositis, thrombocytopenia or neutropenia. Why? There is a chance you may injure the rectal mucosa, the rectal root there, and it may cause bleeding. Okay, that is the reason it is not recommended. Patient with neutropenia or thrombocytopenia, mucositis or rectal lesions or anal lesions, something is there, it's not recommended. It's contraindicated to give rectally. And a rectal route of administration may be appropriate if the patient is having fever, patient has difficulty in swallowing, nausea, vomiting, these are all recommended. But a patient with a neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, in these cases, a rectal route is not recommended. It is contraindicated. Okay. Question number 7. A client is admitted for gastrointestinal bleeding. He has a platelet count of 15,000 mm and platelets have been ordered from a blood bank. Which of the following does the nurse know are required for platelets transfusion? Select all that applied. So it's a SATA questions. So you are going for platelet transfusion. So what all things the nurse required for platelet transfusion? One is ABO incompatibility, 2 is RH incompatibility, third is cross matching, fourth is a specialized platelet filter. So before you go for a platelet transfusion, what all things you should do? You should have the correct. We should choose more. Of course, there will be more than one answer correct here. So the first option is correct. The donor and the recipient should be ABO compatible. So ABO compatibility should be checked. Okay. And the second option, RH incompatible, rhesus compatibility should be met. Okay, and third option is cross matching is not required for platelet transfusion. So what is cross matching? You are adding recipient's blood into the donor's red blood cells. If any antibodies present against the donor blood, it will come on the RBC's body. Okay, so that's what happens. So actually cross matching is required for a platelet transfusion. So the fourth option also correct. Platelets are administered using a specialized platelets filters. So what are correct? ABO compatibility should be there, RH compatibility should be there, and a filter is required. What is not required? A cross matching is not required for a platelet transfusion. Okay. So the cross matching is done for detecting any antibodies of recipient antibodies of recipient blood against the donor RBC. That is what the cross matching is done for. Okay, question number 8. A client's red blood cell transfusion was discontinued due to an acute hemolytic transfusion reaction. Which of the following strategies should the nurse use to best minimize the risk of such a reaction? So, acute hemolytic transfusion reaction is a problem here. So, to avoid such reactions or complications, what the best thing what nurse has to do, the best, what we have to choose the best one. Then first option is the nurse ensures the client's temperature does not increase more than 1.8 degree Fahrenheit during the transfusion. So do you think that is the best thing nurse can do here? No, of course not. The nurse verifies all client identification information according to hospital protocol prior to hanging the unit of blood. Okay, keep in that mind. And the third option is nurse administered meperidine for severe rigors. Then fourth option is the nurse administered acetaminophen prior to the transfusion. So let's go to the rationale. First option is monitoring the patient's temperature may help promptly alert the nurse to reaction about does not prevent it from promptly alert the reaction, but it does not prevent from occurring it. Okay, checking the temperature doesn't prevent anything, but it's an indicate, what is that, it's a red flag. Okay, that may get reaction, nurse to, letting her know that there is some reaction is going on. The second option is the correct option. The most common cause of an acute hemolytic transfusion reaction is the administration of ABO incompatible blood. Okay, so that is the main reason most of the acute hemolytic transfusion reaction. What we have to do in that, so we verifying the client identification information to the hospital policy, nurse can minimize the risk of client being transfused to ABO incompatible blood. So the blood bank is checking the compatibility. Once it comes to the unit, we are also checking everything is written correctly, the name, identification, the hospital number, everything is matching with the blood group, and all the detailed checking is done with one more nurse. You are checking it, then you are transfusing it. That can prevent or the reduce, that can prevent. So that is the main reason of acute hemolytic transfusion reaction, that happens within 24 hours. Okay, the second is a delayed hemolytic transfusion reaction that may happen because of as the antibodies present in the donor antibodies the recipient is developing, delayed due to antibodies present in donors RBC that is started to giving a reaction. That is something delayed, happens after 24 hours of transfusion. So the immediate ones, the acute hemolytic transfusion, are mostly due to transfusion of an incompatible blood group. Okay, so option number 3 is administering meperidine may alleviate symptoms associated with the reaction but does not. The same thing, like checking the temperature, we'll know there is some reaction is going to happen, so it is not preventing. The same thing, it's a meperidine administration also that can alleviate symptoms, but it is not preventing the reaction occurring. The fourth option, administering acetaminophen may indicate to prevent hypersensitivity reaction, but this action will not minimize the risk of an acute hemolysis. So the same thing there too, as it is not preventing the risk. Okay, now question number 8. A client's Question number 8. A client's red blood cell transfusion was discontinued due to question number 9. A client is receiving a blood transfusion. The nurse observed that the client's experiencing diarrhea, abdominal pain, and chills. Which of the following actions should the nurse take first? So the patient is experiencing abdominal pain, diarrhea, pain, and chills, all those things. So it's a possible a hemolytic reaction is taking place. So what the nurse do first? Assist the client to the bathroom. Second, stop the transfusion. Third, administer mepridine. Fourth, get a warming blanket. So even by common sense you can make it you can make an answer here. Can stop the transfusion. That will be the first thing nurse has to do. So let's see first what is the assisting. The option first, assisting client to the bathroom may be an appropriate comfort measures but should not be performed first. First thing what the nurse has to do, that is the correct option is 2. The signs and symptoms of a transfusion reaction may include chills, diarrhea, fever, hives, pruritus, flushing and abdominal or back pain. The nurse first action should be stopping the transfusion. And third option is mepridine may alleviate rigors which the client was not experiencing. In this in the question it is not mentioned the patient is having rigors, so it is not a correct option here too. So option number 4, getting a warm blanket may be appropriate but comfort measure but should not be performed first. First is stopping the transfusion. That is the first option. Then question number 10. Question number 10. The nurse aspirates a central venous catheter prior to drug administration but is not able to verify blood return. The nurse does not feel resistance when flushing or see any fluid leakage, swelling, or redness around the catheter site. Which of the following does the nurse know are appropriate steps? So she is not seeing it is blocked or there is no, she is not feeling resistance, no leaking, no swelling, no redness, nothing. But she is optimistic, means that it is okay, the line is okay. But still you can't flush, you can't give medication unless and you confirmed it is correct, it is infusing correctly and it is patent. So what the nurse has to do, so it more than one option will be correct here. Let's see what are the options given here. Flush the catheter with saline using a 10 ml syringe and push pull technique. That is first option. Second is request the client cough and reattempt aspiration. Third option is administer IV medication and observe for sign and symptoms of catheter malfunction. Fourth option is follow institutional protocol to initiate a declotting protocol. So let's see what is given in rationals. Okay, the option number 1, 2 and 4 is correct. They are flushing the catheter with a saline using 10 ml syringe and a push-pull technique are appropriate step to try to verify blood return in a central venous line. So push-pull technique you can do. Okay, you are using a 10 ml syringe. And then the second correct is instructing the client to cough before reattempting aspiration is an appropriate step to try to verify blood return in a central venous catheter. So ask the patient to cough, okay, and reattempt the aspiration. So then then you are going for what, that push pull technique. Okay, that's what first you are asking the patient to cough, okay, before attempting the then initiating a declotting protocol per policy is an appropriate step to try to verify blood return in a central venous catheter. This based on the policy, what is the declotting policy, what is applicable for that institution. Especially all institutions have maybe some changes, varies from institution to institution, but almost it will be same but little bit of difference. Okay, so you have to follow that one too, declotting what they are doing. So this thing only option wrong here is administering IV medication, particularly cytotoxic medication and fluid, should not be performed until other steps are taken to verify proper placement of the catheter by assessing for patency and blood return. So you have to make sure that the line is patent, then only you can do can proceed further. Okay, that was, I think we covered 10 questions. So I have 15 more questions in this chapter, so I'll be coming to you with with the coming video with the 15 questions more. Okay, so let me take a break here, then I'll see you soon. Hi friends, hi, welcome back. So I'll continue with the pharmacological and the parenteral therapies. So question number 11. A client is admitted for pulmonary embolism and is receiving heparin 1500 units per hour IV. In case of serious bleeding reaction, the nurse has which of the following drugs readily available? The question is asking you the antidote of heparin. So let's see what are the options here. First option vitamin K, second is protamine sulfate, third is promethazine hydrochloride, fourth is protamine. So the let's see the rationale. So why vitamin K is antidote for warfarin. If you want to remember that one, it says war takes what will happen in war? There will be killing. So war, vitamin K antidote is vitamin K. Okay, so you can remember in that way. Correct. The antidote for heparin is protamine sulfate. So the option that is the correct option, option 2. Then the third option is promethazine hydrochloride is not an antidote for heparin and it does not reverse the effect of drug. And protamine, it's only protamine, that's also not the antidote. Okay. The question number 12 is a client is client with non-heparin induced thrombocytopenia HIT is undergoing chemotherapy and is having a central venous access device placed. Which of the following types of central venous access device does the nurse know? Best, minimize the risk of HIT related complications. So the best, which device is best to minimize the risk of heparin induced thrombocytopenia? That is the question. So there are devices which is used to that, like first one is Hickman, second is Broviac, third is Grosholm, and fourth is a Port. So these are all different catheters. Okay, so using for central venous access devices. Okay, so let's see. First of all, some common factors I will tell you. It's a Hickman, Broviac, and Grosholm. They are all valved catheters. All of them are valved catheters. A Port, that doesn't have a valve. Port doesn't have a valve. Hickman, Broviac, and Grosholm, they are all valved catheters. So the difference is the advantage of using Grosholm, that is the correct answer here, that which can minimize the heparin induced thrombocytopenia. How? This one has valve. Grosholm is a valved catheter that does not require heparin flushing. That doesn't. So heparin flushing means additionally you are giving heparin every time. That may induce thrombocytopenia. So how it is, how this one is functioning? It has a patented 3-positioned valves. Okay, pressure sensitive valves. The Grosholm catheter has 3 pressure sensitive valves, in that when you infuse IV fluid, that is opened outward. When you withdraw blood, so that one is functions inward, that is open, and once it is not in use, that one that remain closed. So this is how it is differ from Hickman's and Broviac. So you are not using extra heparin for flushing in this catheter. So this one is the one less risk for developing HIT, a patient who is using heparin therapy. So the other one, like Hickman's and Broviac, both required routinely, they need flushing the valve with heparin. So that is avoidable in this situation. So the correct answer is Grosholm. Okay. Okay, now question number 13. 13. A client has been instructed by his physician to increase his warfarin sodium dose from 5 milligram to 7.5 milligram. He only has 5 milligram tablets available. How many tablets should the nurse instruct him to take? It's easy peasy question. One tablet is 5 milligram. So the revised treatment is prescription is 7.5 milligram. So it is 1.5 milligram. Okay, that is easy peasy. Then next one is the nurse is preparing to set up an intravenous infusion of normal saline 1000 ml over 6 hours period. The tubing draw factor is 10 GTT per ml. Which of the following rate infusion should the nurse choose? So here the question is which rate, how many drops per minute you have to give. So over 1000 over 6 hours. So you are 1000, you can convert that into drops. Is the drop factor here is 10 GTT per ml. So 1000 into 10, so that means that many drops you will get in 1000 ml. Then you divide by time. Time means 6 hours. 6 hours you can convert into minutes. 6 into 60, so you will get like that. So the answer here is 14. The answer here is 28 drops per minute, GTT per minute, in the correct rate of infusion arrive at the follow. 1000 divided by 6 into 10 GTT divided by means 60, that's equal to 27.8 or 28 drops per minute. That's how it is. So 1000 into 10, okay, that makes the total drops. Okay, so then we'll get how many drops there. Then you get you divide by the time, 60 into 6, so that you will get the time. When you divide this one, you will get how many drops per minute you have to start. Then here it's in a calculation again. A man weighs 165 pounds and is being treated for shock. The nurse is preparing a dopamine hydrochloride infusion to start at 5 microgram per kg per minute. The nurse has to prepare the following infusion: dopamine 400 milligram in 250 ml dextrose water. Which of the following rates infusion should the nurse choose? Here first it is given in 165 pounds. That pounds you have to convert into kilogram, because it is 5 microgram per kg per minute is the given ratio for the calculation. So 165 divided by 2.2, you will get the kilograms. That makes a 75 kilogram the client weight. Okay, 75 into 5 microgram, that means how much per kg you have to give in minute you will get. Okay, that is 375, you will get 375 microgram. And 3 that prepare, then that much you get. It's 375 microgram per minute the client has to get. So 375 into 60, that will make 1 minute how much the patient will get. Okay, so then after that that is the decided dose. Then dose in hand, you have 400 milligram in 250 ml. 400 milligram you have to convert into to microgram. That means 400 into 1000, that makes it is 40,000. 400,000. Then into the 400,000. Okay, microgram that makes. So the how much desired amount divided by dose in hand into the volume. Okay, in the volume in hand, that is 250 ml. That makes you that is the answer for that is the option number 1. Option number 1, that is 14 ml per hour. So there are 4 options here: 14, 16, 22.5 and 37.5. The 14 ml per hour will be the answer. Okay, so next one also a calculation. I'm just skipping that. I'm not this like you when you get you have to go through all those 10 calculations. I don't have a board to show you how to do that, so I'm just skipping that question. 17. A client is admitted with sickle cell anemia and voices concern about becoming addicted to pain medicine. The nurse explained the difference between physical dependence, tolerance, and addiction. Which of the following symptoms or behavior does the nurse know is best associated with addiction? So, dependence, tolerance, and addiction. So the best, so the thing is that what you have to know, what is defined as addiction, that you have to keep it in your mind. Okay, so that is a question here, best associated with the addiction of this. So first option is withdrawal symptoms when the drug is abruptly stopped. That is that called addiction? No. Withdrawal symptoms when the drug dose is reduced. Third option is habitual and compulsive use of a drug. Yes, make a point there. Then fourth one is a state of adaptation. Okay, this rational for 17, option 3 is a correct. Addiction is characterized by compulsive use of a drug for reason other than therapeutic benefit. Maybe that patient started taking this medication for pain or something, then that client reached in such a stage that he can't live without this. Okay, that is addiction. There is no therapeutic indication here for this client, but he's just it addicted, means without any reason. There is no therapeutic reason at this point, therapeutic benefit. It is just addicted. Without that the patient can't live. That's it. Okay, so option number 1 is wrong. By withdrawal symptoms when the drug is abruptly stopped are associated with physical dependence on a particular drug, not addiction. So there are withdrawal symptoms. For example, some medication the patient was on some opioids or something, the patient was for therapeutic reason, and once that is abruptly stopped, they can't survive, means they need that. That is, what is that? That is physical dependency. Then the second one is withdrawal symptom when the drug does reduce associated with physical dependency on a particular drug, not addiction. So in the same thing, and if the dose also if reduce, then also patient wants that. That's also physical dependency. Okay, a state of adaptation is associated with tolerance to a particular drug, not addiction. So adaptation, when it becomes a tolerance to particular drug, that is adaptation. Okay. Question number 18. 18 is a client is admitted with severe back pain and is requesting pain medication. During her assessment, the nurse notes the client has been taking acetaminophen 650 mg every 4 hours at home and minimal relief. Based on this information, which of the following PRN ordered drug should the nurse consider administering? So the patient already had 6 times 650 milligram. Okay, that means that is what is our limit for 24 hours is 4 gram. Okay, we can't give more than that. That may be, then it give toxic effect. So let's go through the options here. Hydrocodone with acetaminophen. Then option number 2, acetaminophen. Third is ibuprofen. Third is acetaminophen with oxycodone. So in all this, because he already reached the maximum dose in 24 hours acetaminophen, because he was taking every 4 hours 650. So here we should choose which is without acetaminophen. Okay, that's a clue here. So this is the third option. Ibuprofen is the only option here. Okay, because already patient crossed the limit of acetaminophen. The option 3 is the correct option here. Okay, rest everybody is all the options having acetaminophen. Question number 19. A 14-year-old boy has been prescribed amphetamine and dextroamphetamine for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. The nurse explained that the client should be alert for which of the following adverse drug effect. So you are looking for a adverse effect of this drug amphetamine and dextroamphetamine. Okay, so weight gain, the second is depression, third is somnolence and bradycardia. These are the 4 options here. The correct option here is depression. Depression. So these drugs, it doesn't associated with weight loss. So weight gain was the option, so that is wrong. Then This causes depression. Okay, it's ADHD medication, which is amphetamine and dextroamphetamine, causes depression in children. Depression associated with the as a adverse effect. Okay, and agitation and it can cause agitation and restlessness, not somnolence. Somnolence means increased sleepiness in the daytime. Okay, then that this associated with the fourth option was bradycardia. No, it may cause tachycardia, not bradycardia. Okay. The question number 20. The nurse is administering a drug by a Z-track and must follow the proper technique. Place the following step in appropriate order. All options must be used. So you have to select all options. All options are correct, but you have to select them in the way that how it is performed. So step 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So first option is withdraw the needle. Withdraw the needle, of course, common sense. This will be when? Not the first thing, yeah, of course. Then administer the drug intramuscularly in the dorsogluteal site. Third is release the skin. Fourth is displace the skin lateral to the injection site. So first is what we do. Displace the skin lateral to the injection site. So we grab the skin and towards the lateral side we have to move that and make it in a, like as if it's going somewhere else, like that you have to push towards the lateral side. Okay, then we administer the medication, administer the drug intramuscularly in the dorsogluteal site. Then what we do, once we administer, then we withdraw the needle, then we release the skin. Okay, this is how it is. So you displace the skin to the lateral side, you inject the medication, you withdraw the needle, then you release the skin. Okay, this is the 4 steps of Z-drug injection. The 12. Question number 21, sorry. The client admitted with chronic heart failure is taking furosemide. Which of the following statement, if made by the client, best demonstrate to the nurse that the client understands the side effects associated with this drug? So you are looking in this, the best your knowledge, the patient has enough knowledge about this one and the best one. So the option number 1 is, my blood pressure might be abnormally high. Patient put the furosemide. So what is that? That is a loop diuretics, isn't it? Yes. So when you give diuretics, so normally what happens? The blood pressure drops, isn't it? It's not abnormally high. So that is no. I should include more food such as bananas, apricots and legumes in my diet. Yes, it's potassium depleting diuretics. Yeah, so this is a correct one. Then the third option, I should take the drug before bedtime. So if patient takes before bedtime, he will be going to washroom every now and then during night. So what will happen? His sleep will be disturbed. So when we suggest a patient to take in the morning, isn't it? So that a day time is finished everything. So in the not in the bedtime. So it's morning time is recommended. I should not take the pill with the food. Okay, that was the fourth option. So 21, how it is wrong is Lasix does not have to be taken with the food. Okay, that's it. So correct one, furosemide may decrease potassium. Eating food rich in potassium is advised, like bananas, apricot and legumes. Okay, all he can include in his diet. Okay. Question number 22. The nurse is administering vancomycin 1 gram every 12 hours for a soft tissue infection. The nurse reminds the client to report symptoms associated with one of the serious side effects of the drug, ototoxicity. Which of the following statement by the client indicate to the nurse that the client may be experiencing this adverse reaction? So ototoxicity means problem with the ear. So that is on a side effect of vancomycin. So from this ototoxicity itself, you can make out an option here. And I hear ringing in my ear. So that is something related to the ototoxicity, you can guess. Then the IV is burning. Six, my skin is very itchy. Fourth is I have a bad taste in my mouth. So the first option is the correct option. Question number 22. Tinnitus may indicate that ototoxicity is developing. Ringing sensation in the ear, that is ototoxicity. So tinnitus is vancomycin cause tinnitus. Okay, the feeling IV is burning is not related to development of ototoxicity. So this like itchiness or bad taste or not or feel burning in the skin, these are not related to ototoxicity. Okay, so 23, a client is leaving the clinic with a new prescription for lisinopril. Which of the following suggestions can the nurse make to minimize one of the major effects of lisinopril? Eat fruits and vegetables high in iron, rise slowly from lying to sitting positions, increase fluid intake, avoid aspirin containing drugs. So eating fruits and vegetable high in iron will not minimize the side effect of lisinopril. So option number 1 is wrong. Okay, second option is the correct option. The hypotensive effect of lisinopril may be reduced by rising slowly from lying to sitting or sitting. Postural hypotension, okay, when the patient slowly gets up or sit down or whatever the position changing, that may make the patient, postural hypotension, that may be more affecting if sudden movement takes place. Also slowly rising, slowly changing position, that may help here. So the correct option is the hypotensive effect of lisinopril may be reduced by rising slowly from lying to sitting in position. Okay, to a position. Then increasing fluid intake will not minimize side effects of lisinopril. Fourth option is avoiding aspirin containing drug will not minimize the side effect of lisinopril. So the thing is that while changing position, the patient has to be careful because lisinopril cause hypotensive side effect. Hypotension is a side effect. Okay. 24. The nurse is administering a doxorubicin IV push to a client with breast cancer. Which of the following should the nurse explain to be expected during therapy with this drug? Burning at the IV site during administration. Second option, red colored urine. Third is permanent alopecia. Fourth is teeth discoloration. So what do you think? So the correct option is common side effect of doxorubicin is red colored urine. Okay, burning at the IV site during administration is not a side effect of doxorubicin. So there is no burning happens. Okay, and the second is permanent alopecia is not a side effect of doxorubicin, and teeth discoloration also not a side effect of doxorubicin. So red colored urine is the side effect of doxorubicin. Okay. Question number 25. A 60-year-old woman with anorexia nervosa is having an indwelling central venous access device placed in preparation for total parenteral nutrition. Administering which of the following factors does the nurse know accounts for the client's increased risk of thrombophlebitis with a peripheral intravenous line? So here you are preparing a 60-year-old woman for a TPN, total parenteral nutrition. Okay, she is 60 years old. So if you want, what are the risk factors you see in this lady to have thrombophlebitis if you are giving something peripheral IV if you want? Of course 60 years age is a risk factor, isn't it? It's increased risk for thrombophlebitis. 60 years it will be hard to get an IV line, and so then TPN is, of course, what is this? This is a hypertonic solution, a tonicity of the TPN. Then hypotonicity, TPN is not hypotonic, it is hypertonic. Then poor peripheral venous access. Because of her age itself, we have poor venous access, peripheral venous access. So We have three correct options here. First is the age. Age is a risk factor. The risk of thrombophlebitis is increased in individual over the age of 60. Second option is correct. The risk of thrombophlebitis is increased in individual undergoing treatment with the hypertonic fluids. The third correct option is the risk of thrombophlebitis is increased in individual with poor peripheral venous access. Okay. One option which is wrong here is the risk of thrombophlebitis is increased with hypertonic, not hypotonic. Okay. That we end this parenteral therapies, pharmacological and parenteral therapies chapter question reviews. Okay. So I'll see you with some other topic question answers in next video. Hope you are studying hard for the exam. Okay, thank you for watching. Thank you so much.